All right. So, we are going to be doing a webinar all about how to turn your book into an audiobook. And now, this is more author focused, but it's great for narrators too. And we're going to be going over everything. I am going to try and stay as non biased as I can throughout this whole thing. The only thing I'm not going to say that I'm biased about is when it comes to virtual voices. I'm not really going to talk about virtually voiced audiobooks, digitally voiced audiobooks, or AI in general, because I don't even think it's worth a discussion because I am that opposed to it, which most of you know about me already. So we're not going to talk about AI audiobooks or how you can do it because you just shouldn't do it. So no AI voiced books. That's great. We've got that out of the way. But as we're going along, if you guys have questions, please, please, please feel free to raise your hand or pop them down in the chat window. I will have it open, and if I see questions pop up, I will do my best to answer them. We have so much ground to cover, so I'm just going to dive in. I'm not going to go deep dive into everything unless you guys want me to, and then we can do that together. So with that in mind, Cami, will you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Okay, so that's okay. I decided the best place to start because I wasn't sure where I wanted to start, but really I think the most important thing is how to cast your audiobook because your narrator or narrators or production house, whoever you choose to make your audiobook, is really the most important part. It sets you up for success or the other way around, although hopefully not. So knowing who to cast is a really big, super important first place to start. We'll go to the next slide. All right, so before you can choose a narrator, you need to know how many narrators you want. So we have three different styles of narration. We have solo narration, which is one narrator who voices the entire audiobook, just one person. We have a dual narration, which is two or more narrators who voice every character in their POV chapters. So they are designated chapters and they record everything in that chapter, regardless of who the character is. Or we have duet narration, which is two or more narrators who voice their assigned characters only. Typically, we see this as a masked narrator who reads all the male dialogue and a female narrator who reads all the female dialogue. It doesn't have to be that way. It can also be a multicast with multiple narrators, but this is sort of that more immersive movie style audiobook narration. And you can see by my little dollar signs, they get sort of more expensive with each one, and we'll go over more about that in a minute. Next slide, please. Oop, I think we have somebody who wants to come in too. So hold on one second. Okay. Hey, Danielle. All right. Okay, so choosing which one to go with between solo, dual, or duet is going to be really different for each author. Your budget is going to play a role, but also the genre of your book and your personal preference and what you think your listeners' personal preference is going to be. So, solo narration, despite what we see on social media, is still the most preferred type of audiobook. And I know that's really surprising to people, especially in the romance area, where they assume duet is the most popular, but actually it is solo narration is still the most popular, and it works for all genres. There's not a genre where solo narration does not work. Dual narration is really ideal when you have multiple POVs, especially if the POVs are varying genders. It can help be more immersive for listeners. Some listeners don't like it. They prefer solo because of the solo narration, because audiobooks are so intimate and you listen to it and you get really comfy with somebody's voice. Sometimes a dual audiobook can jolt you out of that because you get really comfy with one narrator and then suddenly you're on to another. But that being said, a lot of people do like it. So if you have the opportunity and you can talk to some of your readers or people who you know want your audiobook, feel free to ask them which they prefer and pull them and see what they say. Duet is very popular in romance, and for good reason. As I said earlier, it's a more immersive experience, and I also think duet is really good for marketing. We have seen authors who have gone for duet styles do really well in their sales because their narrators were duet narrators. They were bigger names. You've got twice the amount of narrators now who can sort of help promote your audiobook. You can use their listeners to drive your new readership. So I think duet can be really good for marketing as well. Yeah, if we'll go to the next one, please, Cami. Thank you. So, how do you find a narrator? There's quite a few ways to find narrators. These are just some of the ways. I think they're the most popular ways of doing it. So, ACX, which is Audiobook Creation Exchange, is really the biggest platform, and it's where most people find their narrators because you can put your book up for audition there and you'll get possibly hundreds of auditions, especially if you're offering a high rate. We'll go into that in more detail later. Social media can be another great place. I know a couple of my authors I have worked for, we have found each other through social media, and that's been wonderful. It's a good place because you can go through their videos and you can see what other books they've narrated. You can get a good sense of what they sound like, how passionate they are, how much they market audiobooks. You can get a pretty good sense of that. But there is a pitfall there where there are a lot of people on social media who present themselves as audiobook narrators but have never actually produced a title. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that there are some extraordinary narrators who do not do social media. They are not comfortable with it, and that's okay too. So, Audiophile Magazine is actually a place where I think people should definitely check out because this reference guide. Also, I'm just going to point out quickly, I have listed here their website. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to have all the links that you see throughout in one spot so I can copy and paste them into the chat for you so you can have them all in one spot. Or if you have the recorded version of this, you can sort of screenshot them all at the end and they'll all be there so you don't have to try and like take notes throughout. So just know that they will be available there. But Audiophile Magazine has a reference guide of professional narrators. They are vetted narrators. To be on the reference guide, you have to pay an annual fee. And what I have found is that usually when narrators are willing to pay an annual fee like that, it's because they're very committed in their business. They're more likely to be somebody who's not mm, just Joe Schmo off the street, which is the case with ACX. There is no vetting process on ACX. Literally anyone can make a narrator ACX profile. They do not have to have a microphone. They do not have to have a pro setup. It can be anyone. So there's a little bit more to potentially be wary of with ACX. Not necessarily, but with a place like Audiophile Magazine, you can have a little bit more confidence. Then there's a production house. So if you do end up going with a production house or even an audiobook publisher, you can request a narrator that you want. They will usually, if you don't have somebody in mind already, they will send you a list of the people that they think are the best choices, and they're really good at casting. They know these voices, they know your style of book and what they think will work for it. And they'll normally send you about like 3 to 5 options, and then the author will get to pick from that. Sometimes they do it with auditions, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll just send Audible links. They're all kind of different. And then lastly, your author groups. Leaning on your community and getting references is so great because your authors have already done the vetting for you. So lean on your groups, ask them who they've worked with, how their experience was. That's just another really good resource for you to absolutely utilize. Cami, my darling, if you don't mind switching the slide. Thank you. All right, so say you already know who you want to work with. That's great because it saves you the auditioning process. Feel free to reach out. I cannot stress this enough. I have had so many authors tell me that they've wanted someone to narrate their book, but they were just too nervous to reach out. And that's just silly. Okay. We love authors reaching out to us. We love it so much. So feel free to DM them if they're on social media. Like, that's why we're there. Go to their websites. There's usually some sort of contacts form. I know a lot of narrators have a Google form for authors who are interested, and those are really good because we ask all the questions we want to know up front. So those are great to fill in. So definitely feel free to reach out. And again, you can request them from your publisher or production house. And just as like a little side note here, if your publisher or production house tells you that that narrator is not available, feel free to reach out to the narrator personally and ask them if that is indeed the case. And there might be a chance that that could still work out. So that's just a little pro tip. If you know who you want to work with, give them as much notice as possible. Some narrators might have a random opening, which is fabulous, but others are booked out 4 to 6 months in advance easily. So if you have someone you know, like they are the voice, you have to have them, make sure that you have a good chunk of wiggle room and can be really flexible with your release dates. Um, I'm just adding here at the end to not reach out to a narrator to put you in touch with another narrator. This happens a lot where authors will reach out to female narrators to put them in touch with their male co narrators that they've worked with in the past. Um, and we don't like it. We don't like it. So please, I had somebody reach out to me and say that they said that they wanted to work with me. And then they asked me for the men that I worked with. And then they used the male narrator, but decided to go with somebody cheaper for the female narrator, which is okay. But I felt like she knew that from the get go. And it made me not so happy. And this actually happens a lot with a lot of my female co narrator friends. And yeah, we don't like it. So please don't do that. All right. Next, please. All right. So if you do not know who you want to work with, which is the case usually, and you want to put your book up for audition on a place like ACX, here are some things that you can put in your audition and what you should be looking for while you're listening to auditions, because it can be overwhelming, especially if you're getting upwards of 100 auditions. So I like to tell authors to use a mix of narration and character dialogue because you want to know what your narrator sounds like when she's just describing a boring room. And you want to know what they sound like when they're animated and talking, and when they're talking back and forth. And if it's a male and a female dialogue together, you want to be able to hear those shifts. So having a mix of both of those things in an audition is really important. I also recommend that people do 2 short scenes of varying tones. Try, though, to not go over 500 words if you can. One, for your own sanity, because if you are listening to hundreds of auditions, you don't want to be listening to them at 5 minutes long a pop, which is around what 500 is. So you don't want to be listening to these 7 minute long auditions. And also, I can tell you from a narrator's perspective, we don't like doing more than around 3 minutes because usually the author will have a pretty good sense of if they like our voice or not pretty quickly. And it's free work on our end to be doing all these auditions. And sometimes if we see one that's really long, we'll just skip it and go on to the next one. And you don't want to be missing out on talent just because your audition is too long. And they might just stop earlier anyway, because our guidelines always tell us don't go more than 3 or 5 minutes. So we might just stop and not finish the scene anyway. So do try and keep it under 5 words. But if you can do 2 varying scenes, it can be really helpful for you to figure out the right tones, especially if you're doing a romance book. Include a little spicy scene in there because you want to know if the narrator, when they do it, is going to make you cringe or if you're going to love it. Like that is really, really important, right? And if it's, if you're doing a fantasy book, throw a battle scene in there. See how they sound when they're fighting. Like you want to know that their energy matches your energy. Um, Give useful context notes. I like if I can impart one thing on you guys today, give useful context notes. This very rarely happens where authors let us know what is happening in the scenes we're narrating and who the characters are. So if you can let us know things like their ages, their accents, their like some adjectives that describe their personality, like are they snarky, are they sweet, are they grumpy, what is their deal? Let us know so that we can voice them the way you hear them in your head, because if we don't know, we make it up. We make it up with what we're given, which is usually under 500 words. So let us know. It's great. And if your names are made up, tell us how to pronounce them so that we're not making up some weird stuff. All right. We would appreciate that so, 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 so much. So just keep that in mind. Now, when you're listening for auditions, people think the most important thing you should be listening for is the voice, and I totally disagree. The most important thing for you to listen, especially on ACX, because remember how we talked about the fact that anybody can be on ACX? Listen for audio quality, because somebody could be recording their audition on their iPhone in a bathroom, and you might love their voice. You might be like, yes, that's just what my character sounds like. And they go away and they try and record it on their phone, and then they try and upload it onto ACX and it fails all the tests. And then they don't know what they're doing beyond that. And you have to start all over again. Okay. It's awful. So make sure audio quality sounds good. You'll know, like, if it sounds crackly or echoey, or you're hearing like a ton of mouth noises and like if you can hear them licking their lips, I swear to God, like that is a no, immediate no. Narrators should not be doing that. Also, check to see if they followed your notes because that shows you what type of narrator they are. If they aren't following your direction now at the audition stage, it's very unlikely that they will throughout the rest of the audiobook. So see if they're the type of person who's paying attention to the notes. Then I would listen for a connection to the text. Do they seem like they get these characters, even though it's only a short little snippet, right? Because it is our job to dive in there and bring it to life. And you want to know, are they bringing it to life? Or does it sound like they're reading a book? Are they bringing a story to life or are they reading a book? They're two very, very different things. And I mean, depending on the type of book you want, you just have to make sure it's matching what you'd like. Did they have a dynamic performance? Like, could you tell when they were reading the dialogue that they felt differently when they went from one character to another? They don't have to do these big, over the top character voices, but was it different enough that you could tell the difference between who was speaking? Their pacing. Narrators are really different here. We vary a lot, and some of us narrate really slow. Some of us narrate really fast. And there's no right answer there, but it's your preference. So if they read like a sloth, you're like, oh, maybe they're not the narrator for you. If they're like reading it super fast, you're like, I don't know what you just said. Maybe they're not the narrator for you. Because pacing can be a really hard thing for a narrator to change throughout the entire thing if they have a flow. So listen for that. And character voices, yes, of course, are important. You want your characters to sound like what you want them to sound like. But I always say to keep an open mind here because if it's not in your notes that a character is snarky and somebody read them as like maybe they put more breath into the voice, but you wanted them to sound really snarky, but the narrator doesn't know that, give them a chance to do it again, to read them with more context. And you can absolutely do callbacks. Callbacks is not unusual in this industry. So if you get 100 auditions and you've narrowed it down to a few people you like, feel free to do a callback. We'll do it. We don't mind doing it. You could pick a different scene if you wanted, and you could give more notes. So if you liked someone's performance, but you just weren't sure about their character voices, feel free to do a callback. That's absolutely okay. All right, Cami, thank you, my darling. I'm sorry there's so many slides. All right, so before contracts get signed with narrators, here's some things that I think you absolutely must ask, and then some things that you could ask. Their rate per finished hour. You should know this because this is how you know how much money it's going to cost you. So it's a very big, important question to ask. What their schedule and availability is like. Again, if you're narrowing it down between a few people, this might really matter. If you have trigger warnings in your book that you think are really obvious, let your narrator know that up front. They should ask, but we don't always. Sometimes we just don't think of it or whatever. But if you know you have trigger warnings in your book, it's lovely for you to share those with a potential narrator and then let them decide if it's something that they're comfortable with or not. Um, so those I think are like the most important questions, but here's some other ones you could ask. If you're considering dual or duet, it's absolutely okay to ask them if they have a partner they work with or somebody they recommend, as long as you're planning on using that narrator and not just using them to find different contacts. Does their rate include post-production? Now, it should include post-production, but you want to make sure you're all on the same page with that. So some narrators will say, I charge $250 per finished hour, but 125 of that is for me and 125 of that is for my editor. And they will at the end bill you separately. So you'll get one bill from the editor and one bill from the narrator, but the total is 250. And what you don't want is somebody saying, I charge 125 per finished hour. And then at the end, you still get that bill from the editor and still get the bill from the narrator, and you weren't expecting it. So make sure their rate does include post-production. It's absolutely okay to ask for their Audible link or links if they have a pseudonym as well, or look them up yourself. That's not an unreasonable ask to see if they have done other work. Now, if they don't have a lot of titles, that's not a bad thing, but it's nice for you to know, especially if you're choosing between multiple people, if it's a more experienced narrator or not. And if they haven't done any work, that's something you want to know, just so that you have it in your head that they may need extra long deadlines while they're trying to figure it all out. Do they help market the audiobook? Now, this is a tough one for me because it's not actually the narrator's job to market the audiobook. We do not get paid for it. If we're not doing a royalty share deal, we don't really gain much from it. So this is not the job of the narrator. However, it's really nice. It's really nice to have another person on your team who helps share your book. I tend to market the audiobooks because I like people to know the books I'm working on. I'm proud of them. I want people to hear them. I also want people to know I'm working. So I really like sharing the books that I do. But again, not everyone's on social media, so not everyone's going to do that. But it is nice to know. And again, if you're trying to narrow it down, like if somebody else is going to help you market it, that might be the person you end up going with. Is there a time limit on callback auditions? I don't think so. Like, do you mean like for you to make a choice or for how long they have to do it?
No, I meant for if we have to send them another snippet of the book to edition again. Like, do we need to keep it under 500 words again, make it
Oh,
shorter, or
I would still keep it around 500. I wouldn't go over that. You can go under that, but I wouldn't go over that because unless you feel like you really, really need to, sorry, but I wouldn't unless, because usually I think you can glean everything you need to from 5 minutes because it's a lot. Usually people know within the first like 5 to 30 seconds if it's a voice that they like, and then it sort of takes longer to realize if it's like a performance they like. But I would say if you have 2 5-minute clips, like that should be enough. But also, it depends on the narrator, so feel free to ask them. Like, ask them if they want to do a callback, and then ask them if they have a time limit. I think that's totally fair, and a lot of times if they really want to work with you, they'll do it. They will. But like, just for an example, like a 5-minute audition for a narrator probably takes about 30 minutes, maybe longer, and then to record. And then they'll spend like a possibly like another 10, 15, 30 minutes editing it to make it sound nice. So it's a process. So it could be, like an hour long situation. So I think that's why they want to keep them short. But again, it's worth it if you end up getting the job and it's good practice and all the things. Another question you can ask your narrator is if they narrate live, because live narration is really starting to drive sales, and not just the audiobook, but the print and ebook versions as well. It can be a really big, nice boost if they do narrate live. I do narrate live quite a lot, but there are some books I don't narrate live, and I always let my authors know that. Usually it's if it's just so spicy that there is no point because I'll be muted the whole time anyway, or if it's a book where it has a lot of accents I'm not familiar with, I don't feel comfortable doing those live, because I like have to go back and look things up so constantly. So ask them if narrating live is something that they do and if it's something they would do for your book. Which brings me to accents, actually. What accents can they do? If you know you have accents in your book, definitely let a potential narrator know that and ask if they can do those accents. Yes, so sorry. When I say narrate live, I do mean live stream. So I mean live on TikTok or live on Instagram. Those are the two big ones. I know some people will narrate live on Discord as well. Those are sort of the biggies. And you can also feel free to ask what their recording setup is. Like if you've gone to their Audible and you've seen that they have no titles, you could say, feel free to ask them what equipment they use. And you should be able to tell by their response alone, really, like even if you aren't familiar with what a Rode NT1 is or a Scarlett IT, but if they don't have an interface, if they don't know how to answer that question, you can also ask them if they record, like what their soundproofing setup is like. But do be aware, like if somebody tells you they record in a closet, that is okay. That is not a bad place to record. If someone tells you they use Audacity, that's okay too. Like it's not the most expensive job, but it does work. So don't rule someone out just because it sounds like their equipment is not like Not, not everybody has $1,000 equipment on everything. But as long as they know what they're talking about and they can provide you some specs, ask them what their noise floor is. Like you don't even have to know what a good noise floor is. If you ask them and they respond, like that'll be good enough. So yeah, you could always throw that in if you're worried about that. All right, Cami, I'm gonna have a sip of tea because I'm losing my voice already. You'd think I don't talk for a living. All right, we all know this is why you're here. And that is okay. Pricing. In my form that I had everybody fill out for this, pricing was definitely one of the biggest questions people had, which makes a lot of sense. So let's dive in. I want everyone to keep in mind there are going to be so many variables. So a lot of this from here on out is going to be a lot of estimating. But we shall do our best. Cami, my darling. All right, so we're going to start off doing some math because everybody likes math. It's a thing, right? So, in the audiobook world, all audiobooks are done by per finished hour. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. I have seen this on some of the other like sites like Fiverr where they try and charge you in other ways. And no, we do it by per finished hour. It's how every professional does it. So what you have to find out first is how long your book is going to be in audio format, and then you can start to get an idea of how much it's going to cost. So you'll take your word count and you divide it by 9,300. That's the average amount of words spoken in an hour. And it gives you a very rough estimate of the length of your book in audio format. This has so much wiggle room. We were talking earlier about how narrators have different pacing, so that will affect this count. Also, the genre affects this as well. If it's a book that has like a lot of fast-paced action scenes, that 9,300 is totally going to change. Your book might end up being an hour shorter. If it's very dramatic and there are lots of pauses and slow thinking and oh my god, did that just like it can really slow down and you can get your book can be an extra hour and a half long. It's not uncommon. This 9,300 is a good estimate, but it is not the end all be all. So when you are doing this math for yourself, tack on like an extra hour and then be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't happen, just to be on the safe side. Solo narration is typically a minimum of $250 per finished hour. So you take your word count, you divide it by 9,300 and you times it by 250, and that is a rough estimate of an average audiobook. Now, obviously, the price $250 per finished hour changes wildly from narrator to narrator. There are people who charge less. They shouldn't, but they do. Um, so that's a potential option. There are people who charge double this. I mean, Teddy Hamilton is not charging you $250 per finished hour, right? Because he brings in the listeners. He can afford to charge you more. And typically, narrators who do charge more are narrators who are bringing in new listeners to your book because they have a following, which is great. Or they have more experience and they bring that with them. So 250 is like a starting, and it just goes up from there. But again, there's thousands of narrators out there, so it's so hard to say what they're going to charge. That's why we ask them. Now, dual narration is slightly higher, but usually not too much higher. Usually it just includes a dual prep fee. The reason for that is both narrators read the entirety of the book, right? They don't just read their portions. That way they know what happened in the chapter before theirs and they know how to respond. But we only get paid for the bits that we recorded. So if your book's 8 hours long and each narrator records 4 hours, then they each get paid for 4 hours. They don't get paid 8 hours each. It's just their runtime, not the total runtime of the book. So, what that means is that they're just losing out on a little bit of money during their prep time. And also, beyond that, we will share notes with each other. So, we'll send each other voice samples of any characters that we share. And a lot of times we'll meet and discuss. So, it just sort of covers that dual prep fee. And it's usually around $100. Duet narration is so expensive, you guys. The editing involved is nuts. So duet is lovely to have, but the reason there isn't more of it is because it's more expensive. I didn't put a minimum cost here of what duet is because it varies so widely. So I would like I want to say it's around 325 and up per finished hour, but again, it's so hard to say. But it is more expensive just because if you can imagine all the duet books I've ever done, I've not even been in the same continent as my co-narrator. Like we do not record in the same studio together. We're in our own little booths with our own noise floors, our own sounds going on, and our engineers splice us together and make it sound like we're in the same room. It's a miracle. But it's an expensive miracle. So that's why that one's more pricey. Cami, my darling, if you could go next, thank you so much. I'm sorry to make you keep clicking. Sip of tea while we wait. Okay. So I'm just going to touch on this briefly. These are the three pricing models of ACX, and they are very specific to ACX. We have royalty share, which is zero out of pocket, and you split the royalties with the narrator. The author and the narrator each get 20% of sales, and Audible gets the rest. This is only available for Audible exclusive. No, that's you have to go exclusive if you decide to do royalty share. Royalty Share Plus is a mixture of this top and bottom one. So it's a much lower hourly rate. It's usually about 50% of whatever they charge per finished hour, plus the same royalty split as above. And that out-of-pocket fee there is designed to cover post-production cost. So whenever a narrator takes on a royalty share project, there's just a little gamble that they're never going to make their money back. They're going to put all their time into it and then never see a dime. But we have to pay proofers and engineers. And so then suddenly royalty share is like, it's too risky because I could end up paying to narrate your audiobook. So Royalty Share Plus was created to cover those outsourcing costs so that our engineer can still get paid, our proofer can still get paid, and then we as the narrator can hopefully make our time back in royalties. But again, it's only for Audible exclusive. Per finished hour is a lump sum. So the author splits the royalties with Audible, and it can be exclusive or non exclusive. You can do either or. Down below, I have, again, all these links are going to be available at the end. I have Audible is changing their royalty share program, but it's still in beta. It hasn't started yet, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But they have this new Audible Plus catalog. Um, I do have strong feelings about it, but again, I'm going to try and not be biased too much in this. So there's two videos you can watch. One is Audible's explanation of their new royalty plan. I can tell you guys, I've watched these videos at least 10 times. I still cannot make sense of it, but maybe you can, so good luck. The next is Daniel Green's video on the new ACX royalty share plan. It's not positive. It's not a nice video, but if you want to learn more about what their new royalty share plan is, you can check that out there. All right, next, please. All right, so you know who you're going to hire. Now you need to know where you're going to make your audiobook from. If you've already chosen ACX, that's great, but if not, here are some other platforms to choose from. All right. So first, these are kind of the biggies. ACX, they're the biggest, right? So you can put up your book for audition, select a narrator based on auditions received. Your narrator is also your producer. It's a one-stop shop, and we'll go over more in a second. Authors Republic is like an alternative to ACX. It's very, very similar. In audio, used to be Spotify, used to be Findaway Voices. If you already have a narrator and you want to be non-exclusive with Audible, you can upload your stuff there and you can distribute it all over the place. You can also go with a production house or an audio publisher. So you can pay a company to handle the entire production. Usually you'll still have the final say in casting. Or you can try and sell your audio rights to a publisher like Podium Entertainment. Next, please, Cami. Thank you. Okay, so ACX, as I said, it's a one-stop shop. So royalties are 40% if you go exclusive. They are 25% if you go non-exclusive, or 20% for Royalty Share Plus. They are the largest audiobook platform in the world. 65% of all audiobook sales in the US were through Audible alone, which is pretty massive. They have the royalty share options, so you do have the option to make your audiobook with no money out of pocket. It does not pay the best royalties of every platform out there. It does strong arm you into going exclusive. They want you to be exclusive with them, and they play dirty to get it. It's limited to the USA, UK, Southern Ireland, and Canada. So if you are outside of those areas, you can't use ACX, unfortunately. So you're sort of limited there. I'm so sorry to my Australian author friends. All right, next, please. In audio, so as we said, it used to be Find a Way. So they say it's their royalties are 80%, but what happens is the retailers take their cut first, and then you get 80% after they've taken their cut. So really, the royalties are more like 40 to 50%. They can distribute to tons of audiobook platforms with the click of a button. It's really, really fast and great. You can use it no matter where you're at in the world. You can set your own pricing, which is quite nice, but it's only an uploading service. And it has had questionable terms of service in the past. Usually there's enough outrage that people then say, no, and they change it. So at the minute they're doing okay, but it is something to watch out for. All right, next, please. Authors Republic. This, as I said earlier, is an alternative to ACX. It is a one-stop shop. Royalties, again, they say 80%, but it's after retailers take their portion. So it does end up being a lot less than 80%. So sometimes that seems just way too good to be true, and it is a little bit. But you can distribute to tons of audiobook platforms, the same as you can with InAudio. You can set your own pricing. It's global. The main thing I've heard about them is that it takes a long time for your book to hit the retailers, especially Audible. And actually, this is true of InRepublic too. If you're trying to get your book on Audible, you should always upload it through ACX. You can do all these other places as well, but ACX has a 10 business days to check the audio and upload it. If you do it through one of these other third-party sites, it can take up to 3 months, which is such a bummer. And I've seen it happen. It happened to an author friend I've worked with. I've read about it online. It can take ages. So if you're doing it through Authors Republic or InAudio, don't select ACX. Do it to ACX themselves, and it will go a lot faster because it is the largest platform, and you do want your book on Audible as quickly as you can. This series, the Self-Publishing with Dale podcast, it's so, so good. I definitely recommend you guys check out his YouTube videos. This one I thought was really good about Authors Republic. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, here is some other platforms. There's more than you think. So Spotify, again, I found their wording quite confusing, but if you are going for their a la carte option, you get 50% of the suggested retail price, or royalties can be paid to you or your company based on you or your company's pro rata share of the total consumption of distributed audiobook content as reasonably determined by Spotify. I did put a link there for more information you guys can look up later. Kobo is great. I think it's actually a pretty good option. For audiobooks, you receive 45% of the list price for a la carte purchases. For subscription downloads, you'll receive 32% of the list price. There's also Kobo and Kobo Plus, and there is a difference between them, so make sure you look into that as well. Curios, you get 100% of the royalties, which is great. And the reason they are able to do that is because they actually charge a platform fee at checkout for the customer. So the fee ends up going on the consumer, not the creator, which is great. So Curios is sort of like a no risk place to upload your audiobook if you are wide. Obviously, if you're exclusive with ACX, it's not an option for you. Google Play, their royalty for audiobooks is 52%. This video down here is, again, it's a really good resource for figuring out how many places and where and how you can upload your audiobook if you're going wide. It is a little dated, this video, but most of the information in there is still accurate. It's just some of the names aren't quite right, but the information is still accurate. So it's definitely worth a look if you've decided to go wide. Okay, Cammy, my dear. You guys, this is a lot of information. If if I am overwhelming your senses at all, we can take a little break. Just let me know. I am definitely info dumping on you, and you guys are taking it really well. Thank you. But feel free to make me pause. Okay. So if you decide you don't want to be doing that, you want somebody to just make your audiobook for you because blah, that's fine. This is why production houses exist. They will take away the guesswork. You will give them your book and they will run with it and they will turn it into an audiobook. A lot of them have different marketing packages, which is great. It's a high quality, the stuff they produce. They have a wider reach because a lot of them have, which I've mentioned at the bottom, they have ALC teams, advanced listener copies, which get reviews, which is great. They use vetted narrators, proofers, and engineers. So everyone who's on their team, they have approved. And trust me, it takes a lot to get them to approve you. So if you're working with a production house, you can usually feel pretty confident that they're doing a good job. They're not all the same. They do all offer sometimes different royalties, different deals. Not all of them are amazing, and some of them really, really, really are. And again, I am non-biased over here, so I'm not going to go into that. But definitely do your research, and again, reach out to your author groups and ask them what they think about who to work with. Yeah, we'll go on to the next slide, please. To go wide or exclusive, that is the question. And my answer to that you're probably not going to like, which is I don't know. It is different for everyone and every book. So it's a really hard question to answer. I literally asked the CEO of Audible, like I found him at the London Book Fair, and I was like, so wider exclusive? And he went, uh, like no one likes to answer that question because it really is different for every situation. So we're just going to talk about the things to consider for you, and then you can make up your own mind. Cami, please. Thank you. All right, so let's go over the pros and cons. So the pros of going wide are you have so much more freedom because you can upload it to over 50 different platforms. You have a wider reach. You can be in the library, which I think is great. You have better marketing opportunities because you can put it up on NetGalley and BookFunnel and all these different places to try, and you can put it up on your own website if you want. So there's a lot more you can do if you're not tied down to ACX. You have more control. You can set your own price. You can put your audiobook on sale. You can pull it if you don't like it and redo it if you want. It's your audiobook. You can do whatever you like. The cons: lower royalties on Audible. Instead of getting that 40%, you're only getting 25%. And because most sales happen on Audible, this is a real consideration. It can be more expensive to make. That's because you only have the option of per finished hour going wide. You cannot do a royalty share. So it's going to cost you more out of pocket. But then again, you might have higher sales if you're putting it across 50 different platforms. You don't get Audible codes. So Audible, if you go exclusive, you do get codes in the US and UK that you can use for promotional stuff, but you can also generate codes from other places. But you don't get Audible codes, and getting reviews on Audible is gold. It really is. So those are helpful. So exclusive, our pros list is a little shorter, but that's okay. You do get the higher royalties. You get the 40%. And you do have the option of doing royalty share and royalty share plus, which means you can pay literally nothing out of pocket and split royalties with somebody, or you can pay half of what you would have to pay for a per finished hour deal. And that is something to consider, and that can be really important for some people. Cons: you have less control. You cannot pick how much it costs. You have no control on when it goes on sale or when it doesn't. You're in a 7-year commitment if you choose that royalty share plus option with your narrator. So you guys agree for 7 years that you're in it. You're on Audible exclusive together. When that 7-year ends, your narrator, you still continue to share royalties. That never goes away unless you decide to pull the book. Now, in that 7 years, you cannot pull that book without your narrator's permission. And your narrator is absolutely within their rights to request a buyout from you to cover their loss of royalties that they'd make in the upcoming years. You have a smaller distribution. You are only on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, and that is it. The reason Royalty Share and Royalty Share Plus is not an option when you go wide is because it's much harder to track it, right? Like they're okay with you doing it because it's just on Audible. It's one system, so they can track all your sales and there's your royalty. But if you're wide, they're not going to track how much you made on Google and how much you made on Spotify and how much you know what I mean? Like they're not going to track the royalties for all of that and then pay you because that's just too much work for them. And again, they like to strong arm you. They want you exclusive. They want your book just on them so that listeners will only come to them. Um, so that is why I hope that answered your question. All right, can we have our next slide, please, Cami? Cami, I owe you a bottle of wine. I can't recommend this Facebook group enough. Marketing Audiobooks Wide is a Facebook group, and they talk about, you can see all the different places right there that you can upload your audiobook to. These people have such great information. You can join the Facebook group and you can just search your questions in the group, and I'm sure they've already been answered from past posts. It's a really, really, really great group. I highly recommend you joining it if you're considering going wide. Next, please. Okay, you have your narrator. You know what platform you're going to go on. You know if you're going to go wide or not. So, what happens next? What's the actual production side of the audiobook? That's what we're going to go over. Cami? All right, this this is a slide from a video I have made before, which I have a couple on my website that are just free videos you can feel free to watch. And this one is all about making your books through ACX specifically, but the process is mostly the same. So if you choose to do your book on ACX, your very first step is to claim it on ACX. Now, whether or not you're going to make your book on ACX, you need to claim your book immediately because ACX security, if we haven't learned by now, is not great. Anyone can claim your book. Anyone can claim your book. They do not have to prove anything. They can claim your book, turn it into an audiobook by either finding a narrator who doesn't know better or by using a virtual voice. And they can put it up for sale until they get caught and have to take it down. Now, if you claim your book, you have to do like one or two steps. You do not have to commit, but do that, claim your book, and then nobody else can do it. It is one of the most ridiculous things ACX does, and I don't know why they can't sort it, but claim your book on ACX. Next, you can submit it for auditions, review your auditions. If you find your narrator, you know who it is, then it's time to make an offer. I always think it's nice if authors have a little chat with you first before they make an offer, just to make sure the rate's good and the timing is good. So have a little chat with whoever it is you're planning to hire and then make your offer. And then they will hopefully accept your offer and you'll move forward. You'll upload the manuscripts and complete the welcome packet questionnaire if your narrator has one. Cami, do you mind going to the next slide real quick? This is what my character info sheet looks like. Now, not every narrator has one, but a lot of us do, and it really, really helps us know how to voice your characters like you hear them in your head, right? So when we're prepping an audiobook, we go through and we look for so many things. Any adjective you ever use to describe your character's voice, like, believe me, we are jotting that down. But I like to have this on hand too because it gives me extra insight to how you're thinking so that I know it helps so much. So here's I think this is pretty standard what most people ask. So their age. Ages are so important. Let us know the ages of your character's name. It doesn't have to be exact. Like you don't have to tell me they're 42. You can just say they're in their 40s. That's fine. Your ideal casting. This you would not believe how many authors freak out with this question when I ask them about their ideal casting. Some authors are like, "Yes, I know exactly. It's Jason Momoa. Like I know exactly who I want you to sound like." Other people are like, I have to celebrity. What's a celebrity? I don't know. And that's okay too. So if you don't have an ideal casting, totally fine. If you do, super helpful. Either way is fine. Their class education level. Now, this I sort of find is more important in fantasy and sci-fi anytime it really affects the way they sound. Like, especially here in the UK, like a really posh person sounds very different from a commoner. So having that sort of, if there is a distinction between their classes, it's really nice to know where they're from, if they have accents. I know, authors, I know it can be hard to keep track of every single character in your book. I have done books before where I get this all filled out. It's so nice. And then 3/4 of the way through, I'm like, huh, this person's Irish. This was not mentioned on my sheet. And it's because the author, she forgot. She was like, oh, I forgot he was in there. Like, it's fine. But if you can, do try to remember if you have any characters with accents, let us know. Um, I will say this a couple times. Your narrator should read the book first, but assume they don't. They should assume they don't, because then you've covered your bases. So if you know you have a character at the end who turns out was like a mystery person who's a man, or they actually have a German accent, but you don't mention it until the last chapter for some reason, which you don't think would happen, but actually does, just let us know. Just let us know. um, yeah, just let them know. 1 to 3 adjectives that best describe them. This is actually, I think, the most helpful thing you could possibly do. It really does help us cast our own characters. If it's a series and they're a small character but will eventually become a bigger character, please let us know, because it stops us from using a voice that is maybe not sustainable if it's constant. Like, maybe we can do this voice shortly, but like not for hours, right? We would not survive. So that's just another thing to think about. Could you do the next slide, please? Okay, so you've uploaded the manuscript, you've filled out your welcome packet questionnaire, and your narrator is prepping away. They will then upload the 15-minute checkpoint, which has the most deceiving name of anything in this whole process. It's called the first 15. It is not the first 15 minutes of your audiobook. It's not, it doesn't even have to be 15 minutes long. It is a checkpoint, so we've got that right. What this is your opportunity to hear how your narrator intends to narrate the entirety of your audiobook. It's the single most important decision you've made since casting. This is the only time you really get any sort of creative directory type input is now. So you don't want to hear just the 15 minutes of your book, because you might not even have main character dialogue in the first 15 minutes. So what you want is you want little sections throughout your book. And, it could be 8 minutes long, it could be 15 minutes long, but you want to hear varying tones, just like you did in auditions. You want to hear you want to hear every main character voice should be in your 15-minute checkpoint. And again, you'll want to hear, if it's a romance book, you'll want to hear a spicy scene. If you want to hear an action scene, a crying scene, you want to hear how your narrator is going to handle it. If you have specific scenes that you want included in your checkpoint, feel free to tell your narrator. Oftentimes, more times than not, I end up picking the scenes myself because I have a pretty good sense of what will give the author the best overview. But if an author has scenes that they want me to do, I am so happy to do that, because I want them to feel confident that their audiobook is going to turn out great. You do have to have a level of trust with your narrator that they're going to interpret your book differently than you, because no one's going to interpret it the way you do, right? That is sort of the beauty of art, is you produce it and then others interpret it the way that they're going to. So it's never going to be exactly like what you imagine, but hopefully you listen to it and you go, yeah, yeah, that's what I had in my head. But you might not. You might be like, you know what, that character they sounded too old. I didn't vibe with them. Do you think you could adjust that? And you're absolutely welcome to do that during the 15-minute checkpoint. And you should be honest, be thorough. You're allowed 2 rounds of this sort of back and forth before people are allowed to amicably part ways and just say, you know what, we've tried this a couple times. Maybe I'm not the narrator for you, and you move on. I've never seen this happen, but it can, and people should be okay with it. Um, so yeah, again, 15-minute checkpoint. It's very, very important that you are happy with it and that you can then imagine what the rest of your audiobook is going to sound like and you don't need any changes. Would you do the next slide for me, Cami, real quick? Thank you. This is something I send to my authors when I do their 15-minute checkpoint, because a lot of times I feel like authors get a little overwhelmed, like they don't know what to listen for. And then sometimes it can make them be like, it's just uncomfortable, like they feel like a teacher or something, like they need to scold somebody or they need to find something wrong, even if they're kind of happy with it. So this is a really good sort of guideline of what to listen for during that 15-minute checkpoint. Pacing, is it too fast, too slow, or is it just right? Character voices. This is a really big one. Do the characters sound the way you expect them to? Are they hitting the mark, or does there need to be some adjustments? We are always expecting to need to make some adjustments. We don't always expect to get it right on the first time. So don't hold back. You have to be honest during this phase, okay? And the overall tone, does it feel correct for what you've envisioned, or are they not quite hitting the mark? Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, you love the 15-minute checkpoint. They totally nailed it. That's great. They go away. Well, no, first, not all narrators will ask you for a 50% deposit, but a lot do. And they will be due after you approve the 15-minute checkpoint. Before that 15-minute checkpoint is approved, your contract can be canceled through ACX. No harm, no foul. You're not obligated to work with each other until that checkpoint is confirmed. Like once you approve it, that's it. You're in the game. So that is when a lot of narrators will ask for a 50% deposit. It's very, very normal to ask for that. Not everybody does do it, but it's pretty standard. Then they go away and they record the rest of the audiobook. Then the editor and proofer will do their magic. The recording of the audiobook, well, we'll talk about that later. Never mind. We'll go over it later. Then it goes to the editor and proofer. They work their magic. They send the narrator a pickup packet of all the mistakes we've made. They fix it. They make it perfect and lovely and meeting ACX specs. Then those files will get uploaded onto ACX or whatever, or they'll just get sent directly to you from maybe Dropbox or something similar. So the author can listen. Um, and then the author gets to review it. And I really do encourage you to listen to the audiobook and do a second round of proofing yourself because we're all human and mistakes happen. So definitely feel free to review it. Actually, Cami, will you go to the next slide for me, pretty please? Oh, thank you. This is, again, something I like to send infographics in case you guys haven't noticed my obsession with Canva yet. It is real. But I send this always to my authors. So their audiobooks the audios have all been uploaded. They can then go and review them. If they find a mistake, they can send it back with a timestamp. So if somebody said the twice in a row. You could say, hey, on chapter 3 at minute marker 235, you said the twice, and then we can go back and we can change it. So we can get this fixed. You just have to kick it back through ACX, and then we can upload the new file. And then once you've approved it, we will then send you our invoice. And then ACX has a little button on our side that says, have you been paid the full amount? And as soon as we click that, then it goes over to ACX Q&A. So that's their quality assurance, where they are checking the sound quality of all the audio files to make sure that they meet specs so that it sounds nice on the other end. Now, this, they say, can take up to 10 business days. There's no way, by the way, to plan a day for it to hit Audible. You cannot say, I want it to come out November 8th. It comes out when it comes out. And unfortunately, there's no way to control that. This whole 10 business days thing, I have had a book of mine come out within 24 hours. I have had a book of mine come out 20 days. Like there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's totally random. What I will say though is if it goes over 10 business days, not 10 days, 10 business days. If it's gone over that, reach out to ACX support, let them know, and it almost always gets released the next day. So yeah, feel free to do that. Then it will go live and you will get your promo codes if you've gone exclusive. All right, next slide, please. I'm going to breathe for a second and take a little sip of tea. That's okay. I feel like I'm so info dumping on you guys and you're taking it so well. All right. How long does it take to make an audiobook? When will the audiobook be ready? Okay, this is another one that it's seriously, it varies wildly. So we're just gonna go over some estimates. Cami, if you please. Thank you. Okay, so this is the process, right? This was really hard for me actually to pick the timings because they vary so much. I mean, I'm giving you guys info that could apply to a 1.5 hour long novella or a 38 long epic fantasy, right? It's hard. Like these numbers will change drastically depending on your book, depending on your genre, and yeah, a lot of things, who you've hired. So this is really basic stuff. It's more of an overview of what happens than anything else. Um, so casting, I think 1 week is pretty average. But again, if you have 200 auditions and you're the type of person who likes to listen to them all the way through, kudos to you. That 1 week is going to get a little bit longer. If you already know who you want to hire, then you're done in a day. That's great. Narrator prep, that can take 1 to 3 weeks, again, depending on how long the book is. Then you've got your checkpoints, and then it might only take a day. You might listen to it and love it, or it might take up to 5 days if you need some revisions and some tweaking. It can just vary. So 1 to 5 days. Then you have the audiobook recording itself. And Cami, if you could just go to the next slide for me, please. So the audiobook recording is around 2 to 3 hours equals 1 hour of audio. Now, this is going to vary again a lot based on who you hire. So 2 hours to 1 hour is really good. And this is a more professional narrator who's been doing it for a while. They can usually hit that 2 to 1 ratio. Not everybody does. Some people work part-time, some people work full-time. So if your book is 8 hours long, know that it's going to take 16 hours at least of actual physical recording time. And that might be spread out over several days, depending on how much booth time your narrator has. So just something to sort of keep in mind. Okay, next one, please. And then once it's recorded, as I said earlier, it goes off to proofing. Now, again, this can change because some people have proofers who proof along with them as they're recording, so it can be really fast, and that's lovely. Other people, they record the whole book, then it goes to the proofer, and the proofer then has to listen and read the whole thing, and it can take quite a long time, and it's a process. So that can take 1 to 3 weeks quite easily. Then once we've done our pickups, it goes to the editor, and that can easily take 2 to 3 weeks. Again, it depends on the length of the book. And then it goes to the author to review the final thing. Now, really, we say 7 days is about how long an author will have to review their final files before making their final payment and approving it. But different narrators are going to have different feels on that. I tend to give authors as long as they need to review it, but not everyone's like that. Some people give more time, some people give less. Usually not less, but yeah, it can just vary. But let's say about a week. So your total time, yeah, it can easily be 9-15 weeks. It could be less, it could be more, but anyone who's telling you they can do it in a week, I would be very wary of, because to me that's cutting out probably prep, probably proofing, and just some major things that you don't want them skipping. So yes, if we could go to the next slide, please. All right, marketing. This is a big one, and I wish I had like the magic. I know how to make you lots of money, but I don't, and it's really tricky because I have talked to authors who their audiobook sales are higher than their book and their ebook, and audiobooks is what made it for them. And I have talked to people who made zilch on their audiobook. It just went nowhere. It was not worth their investment. And it's always hard for me to hear that when an audiobook hasn't met the investment you were hoping for. Um, and no amount of marketing can super fix that. If it's I don't have a magic answer for it. I really wish I did. I think the best thing you can do for that is really research your genre, what listeners want, and then try your best to give that to them. But I will go over just a couple marketing tips. If we can go to the next slide, please. We're almost done. You guys are doing so amazing. All right. We have seen that aligning the release date of your audiobook with your physical book and ebook, if you can get them all released on the same day, that is ideal. That is gold. The reason for that is usually authors put quite a bit of money into their release day marketing. And if you have an audiobook already there, then that can go in with that same pot of marketing money and you can do them all at once. So we have seen that increases audiobook sales. However, a lot of people do get their audiobook made years after, and we see some good sales with that as well. So it doesn't have to be on release day, but if you can do it on release day, it should save you money marketing. Utilize your promo codes. Reviews are gold. I said that earlier before, but it really is true. The more reviews you have, the better. So using your promo codes to get reviews is such a great way to sort of drum up more interest, especially if you can get them for people who make posts on social media. Always mention your audiobook when you talk about your other formats. If you're talking about your physical copy, talk about your audiobook. If you've got like a nice infographic that you're sharing on Instagram and it has your book and it has your Kindle, put a phone next to it and talk about your audiobook too. It like always talk about your audiobook. Don't leave it out. It's your friend. It doesn't want to be left out. If you're non-exclusive, utilize sites like Chirp, BookBub, NetGalley, BookFunnel, all these places to drum up codes and get listeners and advanced listeners and reviews. Having a hype team is amazing. Having a dedicated group of people who you can send those codes to, who will review it on Audible, who will review it on social media, a dedicated team like that. And sometimes they do it all on the same day and just sort of blast social media. That is such a good way to market your audiobook. Do a live Q&A with your narrator if they're willing, or a Patreon if you have one. Do a live reading that's just special for your subscribers. Anything like that where you can really sort of drum up some excitement. Work with your narrator. Use us. We like it. Some don't, and they'll let you know, but a lot of us do. There's nothing we won't do for you guys if we can. Rebecca Hefner, who owns that marketing audiobooks wide Facebook group I was telling you about earlier, she actually has a free resource all about how to market your audiobook wide. So definitely check that out. It's such a good resource. But yeah, those are my sort of top marketing tips. If we can go to the next slide, please. The do's and don'ts, author to narrator etiquette. I actually this one was a surprise to me. I didn't know people wanted to know this, but in that form, I got people um, asking this question. So I was like, okay, yeah, we will go over it. So here are the do's and don'ts. Cami, my dear, thank you. All right, so here we're just gonna know our boundaries. So do be honest and thorough during your 15-minute checkpoint. I think I hammered that home earlier, but I'm saying it again just to make sure. Make your expectations and deadlines clear. If you are trying to release your book with your audiobook with your physical book, make sure your narrator knows that and that they can hit that deadline. Keep it professional. This should go sort of without saying, especially if it's romance. Your narrator is your narrator, a professional you've hired. They are not your character. They voice your character. They do a really good job. Don't treat them like they're your character because they're not. We're paid to do a job. Keep it professional. Send as much information as you think would be helpful for them to relate to your characters. I've had authors send me so much. They're like, your welcome packet's cute. Here's my info. And I love it. I think it's so great. Feel free to send as much information as you think is helpful. You're not going to go over the top. You're going to be just fine. Make sure you told them about all possible accents or quirks. We've sort of already talked about this. Again, your narrator should read the book first, but assume they didn't. Assume they didn't, because what if they didn't? Hopefully they do, but you can't control that. What you can control is giving them as much information as possible. Provide a pronunciation guide if needed. I cannot tell you, if you are a fantasy author, I'm looking at you right now, okay? Provide a pronunciation guide. And if you do it in audio format, even better. But provide that pronunciation guide. It saves everybody so much effort. Ask if they want to be tagged on social media. And if they do, tag them. Don't leave them out. We feel like the kid nobody wants to play with. Tag us in your stuff, please, please, please. We like it, but ask first because maybe some people don't. But ask, and if they say yes, do it. All right, next, please. Don'ts. Please don't ever share a narrator's real name if they're using a pseudonym. This should be obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. If your narrator has a pseudonym, don't say their real name unless they say it's okay. I don't keep my two separate. Everybody knows I'm also Dahlia Summers, and I'm okay with that. And I tell my authors I'm okay with them tagging me as Samantha Norbury on my Dahlia Summers projects. It's okay. But do ask, and if they say no, don't out them. It could be dangerous. We just don't know. Don't criticize their performance or ask for changes beyond those that are the fault of the narrator if they stay true to the checkpoint. So when you're listening to those final audios, like I said, if somebody said the word the twice, you are so within your rights to say, you fluffed that, please go fix it. Great. If you think like they didn't perform something well, like in your mind, they didn't go big enough, you wanted them to sound bigger throughout the whole thing, unfortunately, it's in their hands. Beyond that 15-minute checkpoint, as long as they're staying true to how they sounded there, it's in their hands. So criticizing them or telling them they've done a bad job, especially publicly, let's not do that. Please don't ask for chapters to be uploaded as recording is happening. Some narrators do this, and we usually suggest that they don't. What typically happens when an author listens to chapters one at a time is they become very nitpicky, where they because they're getting the information so little that they end up obsessing over it a lot more than if they get the whole thing all at the end. And we like to send it to our proofer first and our editor first so that you don't hear all the dumb mistakes that we made. I don't want an author to know just how often I messed up during recorded. I want you guys to hear the polished version. So please allow us to do that. Allow us to work with professional proofers and editors first and send it to you all at once at the end. Don't send a manuscript that isn't ready. When we prep an audiobook, we highlight the heck out of that. We highlight all the different characters. We underline the emotions. We put breath breaks and like tone pauses. We write all over it. If you then, like weeks later, send us a manuscript that has been changed, we have to do all of that all over again. And it's not nice. So please only send a manuscript that is fully ready. Assume we are prepping the heck out of it and we're sticking with that. If you know, if it's been like a couple changes, you can be like, hey, page 18, we switched this. That's fine. Obviously, that's fine. Don't be the director. I feel like this is a really harsh thing to say, but your narrator is the performer, the director, and the producer. They are all those things, and you have to let them be those things. Let them be confident in their performance. If you're trying to direct their performance, they will lose confidence and they will lose connection with the story. You've hired somebody you trust to interpret your book and bring it to life, so you have to let them do that. Don't expect them to market your audiobook beyond what they've told you. If they have agreed, yes, they're going to market your audiobook, great. But don't reach out to them months later and ask them to continuously post videos about your audiobook. That goes beyond a reasonable request. Um, don't feel like you have to change your manuscript for audio. I've had people ask me this quite a few times. What do I have to do to my manuscript to change it for audiobook? Nothing. Nothing at all. If you listen to audiobooks, you know we are used to the tags. We hear he said, she said all the time. It's fine. In fact, if you take those out, it can actually be more confusing for us. So you don't have to do anything different. It is absolutely fine just as it is. And honestly, leaving as it is nice if your people want to utilize whisper sync. If we change it too much, suddenly they can't do that. So just leave it as it is. You don't have to change a thing. And finally, please do not put up an audition for a per finished hour rate of like 200 to 400 per finished hour, and then pick a narrator and then offer them a royalty share deal. It doesn't make us feel nice and it breaks that trust right away. So, whatever you put it up for audition for, stick with that because that is what the narrator has decided to spend their time trying to get. All right. Oh, we're almost done. Okay. Okay, here's all the resources, you guys. It's so many links. I'm sorry for that, but they're all really good. I think they're all worth it. Let me see if I can actually pop these in the chat box for you. And for those of you who are getting the recorded version of this, I will email you these links as well because they are so useful. All right, give me half a second here. I don't know how this is all going to come through, but hopefully it comes through okay. The only things that are on here that are in addition to what was on the slides is I've got a couple things on here for Kickstarter because that is becoming more and more popular for good reason for indie authors to get the funding to make their audiobook. And I definitely recommend it. So, oh, I've gotten way too many. Okay. The first one is a YouTube video that I thought was really, really good, where I think it's four indie authors are talking about their experience making their Kickstarter campaign and what successes they had. So it was really good information. The second one is a Facebook group for Kickstarters, an author Kickstarter group, which of course is going to be very, very helpful if you have questions there. So hopefully that helps you. Okay, here is some of the links, you guys. I'm going to send you some more. I had to do it in two separate ones. And then we are on the last slide. Lovely Cami can rest her fingers. Thank you, Cami, so much for doing that. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done without you. I really so desperately appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. All right. Does anybody have some questions? We can take it off the screen sharing now and just open it up for questions. Thank you again, Cami. I'm going to send you a box of chocolate.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Sam.
Thank
You
you.
know I love you. I would do anything for you, of course. I'm glad I was able to help.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to ask. It is absolutely why we are here. I think
So
hopefully there's,
I'll
yes,
start if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
So when we were talking about the duet and dual narration, so um how do you hire both people, or does like one person become the producer and then like how does that work?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really, really good question. I'm glad that you asked that. So, if you go through ACX, you can only contract one narrator through ACX. So you just have to have an independent contract with your other narrator. And yes, usually one of the narrators ends up becoming the producer. And I can tell you it is usually the female narrator. I don't know why. It's just that's how it goes. Not always, but I personally have never seen it go any other way. Whoever you hire on ACX, whoever your contract is, that is going to be the person who uploads the files because they'll have access to your upload manager. Typically, what happens with a dual or duet is they will have one editor who will edit all of it. Somebody will upload it. You'll have that independent contract with the other person. There's not there's not usually like no one's really, I guess, the producer in that sense. We sort of just work together. It is nice if your narrator has a co-narrator who they've worked with before because they sort of know how to gel with each other, how to work well with each other, who's responsible for what. Um, but that being said, if you found two totally different voices and they don't know each other yet, but that's who you want, that's okay too. That's totally okay. But yeah, does that answer your question, Gabby? Or did I not?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
yeah, you did.
Okay. I love Gabby so much, you guys. I narrated her book, her Spring Fling, just so you guys know, and it was such a
It
fun,
was so
spicy
good.
novella. Yeah, I loved it. And Gabby's wonderful to work with. Absolutely. So I'm glad she's here.
So are you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And does anybody else have a question that they want to ask.
I have a question, but it's a weird question though, because
I
it's
love
very
it.
specific.
That's okay.
Okay. So it's so specific. So I'm really sorry if like anyone like if it doesn't apply to anyone else. But so I am going to be turning my book into a an audiobook. And to not only cut costs, because like I do a lot of acting too, and I want to break out into doing audiobooks. So I was like, well, I'll just do it. And I have some like audio editing experience. I could figure it out. And I like set up a form for auditions to find like the male voice. And I guess it's not really a question, but it's more like like because it's either going to fall on me to edit the whole thing or fall on him to edit the whole thing. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to go through ACX. I'm pretty sure I'm going to just do the whole production side separate and then just upload it to a distributor. But how do you recommend going about finding, like, should I outsource for an editor or like a production studio? What is your advice there? That's the question.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're narrating it yourself, I would skip the production company.
Okay.
You don't need to do that. Um, for editing, so I'm a really big proponent of outsourcing editing because it's hard. It is
It is.
hard and it is time consuming. You remember how I was saying it can take 2 hours to do one finished hour of audio when you're recording?
Hmm.
Editing can take like 6 hours to 1 hour. It is gross how much time editing can take. I was such a perfectionist that I'm not kidding. I was like 8 to 10 hours to one finished hour of audio. I will never edit my own audiobooks again. I hate it. When you're dealing with more than one narrator, when it's a dual or a duet, that
Hmm.
editing gets trickier because you're suddenly needing to match room tone and levels. So,
Hmm.
um, I work with Sean Masters a lot, who I think is so great. But if you guys are familiar with Sean Masters, he has like the deepest, bassiest voice you have ever heard. And I mean, it's glorious. But I I have like this really light, sweet, much higher voice and splicing us together. I mean, God, our poor engineer. I don't know how he does it because we sound so different. And it's a skill to make it sound the same. So if you're if you have a lot of experience editing audio, go for it. Go for it. Be my guest, but I would really recommend you outsource it to one person who's doing both of your files. I know some people who will be like, I'm going to edit mine and you'll edit yours, right? I'm like, no, we edit them together because that is how the audiobook is going to sound nice. If you try and do them individually, it won't sound nice to the listener, and that's not what we want. So I would recommend you outsource it. You can ask the male narrator who his normal engineer is, and just go with that. I can also send you a recommendation for my engineer, who I think is great. He charges $85 per finished hour for duels, and he's good. That includes proofing, and they're really good at the proofing and editing it. So you get all of it finished together. And if you don't want to use ACX, that is totally fine. You can still put your book up for audition on ACX if you want to find
Hmm.
your narrator. Doesn't mean you have to then continue. You can say, I wanted to audition on ACX, but actually, do you mind if we don't use it because I want to go through this other platform, and they'll be fine with that. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, hopefully does that answer your question?
Samantha, that answered so much of my question and more. Thank you so much.
You're
And
so
yes,
so welcome.
and yeah, I would love the name of that engineer. That would be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. So it's Ben Zito from Centennial Sound. I really do. I'll put his website down here. I think he's so great. He's really thorough. I adore him, and I don't ever have a problem sharing um his stuff because I think he deserves it. Let me pull up his website for you.
Thank you.
So welcome. Actually, I'll bet he's in my inbox. I work with him all the time. I'm constantly emailing him, telling him, I've got another project for you. Okay, here is their website in the chat box. For those of you who are getting the recorded version, it's centennialsound.com. That's CENTENNIAL sound. Okay, are there any other questions? We have obviously gone over time because this was not going to go any other way, but I am happy to answer questions if anybody has them, but don't feel obligated. Otherwise, I just really, really, really want to say thank you to Cami for saving my bacon. Honestly, your slideshow finger was on point. So thank you so much. All right. I'm going to stop recording now, but I really hope that everybody got some good information out of this. And thank you so much for being here. It really does. It means a lot. Thank you.